The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Tuesdays are Dynasty days now, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesdays are Dynasty days. This is how it's shaken out. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. I am Dan Besbris. I know almost nothing about Dynasty leagues, but luckily, Adrian Benjamins, a Dynasty whiz, the whiz kid, the wunderkind, is here to guide the way while I ask stupid questions and he gives better answers. Adrian, what's up, man? I haven't talked to you in a few days.
What's going on, Dan? How are you?
Was that weird enough for you? I'm keeping it weird. Adrian and I record our shows, by the way, the night before, and tonight we are celebrating by having a little pre-show cheers to one another. I'm enjoying a Boont, an Anderson Valley Boont Amber Ale, so if anybody that works for that company is listening, feel free to send us product. Adrian, what do you got over there?
I am drinking a Golden Road Mango Cart Mango Wheat Ale. It's very delicious. One of the things I love about it is it's not overly sweet. You know, it's just got a subtle hint of mango in there, so it's not bad. And you know, Dan, I am Filipino, so mango's like my fruit, you know.
I didn't know that. Is mango like the official fruit of the Philippines? I was totally unaware of this.
Mango is like how apples are here. So, you know, here we have apple pie, apple everything. That's how it is in the Philippines. It's like mango everything over there. So, yeah.
I've never been. Mango. I've never been. The closest I've ever been would be Thailand, and that's not particularly close. But there were a lot of mangoes there, too, for whatever that's worth. They had what they called American breakfast at the hotels every day, and it was like mangoes and a piece of toast, and it was delightful, actually, because I learned that a Thai breakfast is like a rice soup, and that's not something that my very fragile body was willing to handle first thing in the morning. So Adrian and I are having a beer. We're getting ready to break down a little bit of the Dynasty draft, and we'll tell you about that in a moment. First things first, this is Fantasy NBA Today. You can follow all of us on Twitter, at Adrian Benjamins, at Dan Besbris, at Hoopball Fantasy. You guys know the drill. Go to hoop-ball.com for all of your hoop ball news, all of your fantasy basketball stuff, all the latest and greatest. We got a Cause and Brew show that came out Monday evening, so you can check that out. We got the links up at Hoopball and through the Twitter sphere as well. We also have some little bonus stuff to talk about later on in today's show. It's not going to be gambling heavy. We're going to try to break that up a little bit. As I mentioned on yesterday's pod, there is going to be generally the solo shows where you guys are just stuck with me by myself. I'm going to lecture you about gambling. And then when there's actually another person that has to deal with me for 30 or 40 minutes, we'll likely talk about something else. Adrian, you're the commissioner of Hoopball's second Dynasty League, and you guys have your draft going right now.
Yes, we started our draft on Sunday. On Saturday, actually Friday evening, we did a lottery drawing, which I did online. I did a live one on Google Hangout. My first time ever doing that. That was a lot of fun. And it was great, Dan. And it was cool to get all of the guys in the league in there chatting, talking. It was awesome. I unluckily drew the number 20 spot out of 24 teams.
Oh, ouch.
So that wasn't that great. But Dan, you know, we got a great group of guys in this league. And one of the really fun things about this, man, is this is truly a global league. We got guys from Singapore, Philippines, Latvia, Australia, New Britain, all across the United States. And man, it is really fun when you find other guys that are as like passionate about this as you are and who are like global. Like these guys, you know, it's funny. It's like when we're going to sleep, somebody else is waking up. And it's just hilarious. Just we've all connected on GroupMe. This is my first time ever using GroupMe, and a really great way to connect with all of the guys from the draft. And it's been insane, Dan. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really excited to start this league with this great group of guys.
If you didn't have a chance, by the way, to listen to last week's shows, we found out that Adrian did finally turn 21 a week ago today. No, I kid, of course. Adrian is far older than any of us would have ever thought. He's 70. He is 75 years old, and it's really impressive that someone of your age could get on and learn how to use GroupMe. So that's so you're talking about the global part of this, and you mentioned it very briefly before we went on air, and so I pulled up the chart actually of this podcast, and I don't know exactly what length of time this number spans. So we're going to mostly do it by ranking. I believe that it's over the last 3 months. I'm not positive. It doesn't matter, frankly, because I'm going to just go by ranking. But I pulled up a list, and there are 69 different, it's not necessarily always countries. It's generally separated by country, but there are some, like Puerto Rico is its own number on this, and obviously they're a commonwealth of the United States. Generally, however, these are countries. There are 69 different nations that have tuned into Fantasy NBA Today at least one time over the last 3 months. Do you want to play a little, before we get into the Dynasty draft stuff, do you want to play a little who the heck is listening to us game here? I don't have an official trivia game ready, but I'll make something up on the fly.
Sure. I'm not going to be very good at this. I'm not good at geography.
Oh, well.
I'll give it a go.
Well, you have a little inside information because you've seen where some of the Dynasty League participants are from. So I don't know that that's necessarily always going to be the right answer, but at least you have an idea of some of the locations. So let's start on the easier side here, and the questions are going to get progressively more obscure, I think. Can you tell me, let's say 4 of the top 10 nations that tune into this podcast? You can give me 4 out of the top 10. You get credit for this one.
Okay, I'm gonna say
well, one's
Australia.
That is correct. One of them is a gimme.
I'm gonna say the Philippines. I know there's a lot of hoop heads in the Philippines.
You are right. Did you say the United States, by the way?
No.
All right. Well, we'll give you that one. That one's like
Okay.
that one's like the bingo. That's the center slot. So now you've got 3 already.
And I'll say let's go with England.
Yep, you are right. You got that was an easy one. In fact, you listed 4 of the top 5. Third place was Canada. That's the one you jumped over, was Canada. 6 through 10, by the way, which were the ones that you would have had to go to if you wanted to get a little bit more obscure. New Zealand, Singapore, Greece, Spain, and Israel. That's the top 10 in listenership to Fantasy NBA Today. Can you name any of the countries in the 11 through 20 chunk? Any one of them. I'll give you 3 guesses.
Let's see. 11 through 20. I cannot.
Yeah, that would have been a tough one. Well, one of them actually makes a lot of sense.
Shoot.
You want to try one?
Yeah.
All right, what you got?
Let's go with China.
China,
big NBA following in China, isn't there?
China did not make the cut, and it's possible it didn't make the cut because for some reason China and Hong Kong were separated in this list. If you put them together, they would have been in, I believe, 15th slot. So that would have been. I'll go ahead and give you half credit. Here's 11 through 20, by the way, and then we're gonna get into the Dynasty draft stuff. I thought this stuff was, it was apt to you talking about all the places that are in the Dynasty League. 11 was Serbia. That was the one I thought maybe you might stumble onto. It's a big basketball nation. A lot of players in the NBA from Serbia. Sweden, the United Arab Emirates, Norway, Latvia, Mongolia, Thailand, France, and then Hong Kong, I think, was the last one there. So
what about Croatia?
Let me see. That one. There it is
Spain.
down there. It's Croatia's like 45 or 6, pretty far down the list. Spain is not that much farther down. Spain was number 9. That was in the top 10. So you were good on that one. And then the very last one. This is the last thing I'm going to bring up. There are 9 locations that have listened to exactly one podcast over the last 3 months. It's obviously somebody just goofed, clicked on a wrong link, and realized, oh my God, this idiot is speaking English and he's speaking about fantasy basketball. This is not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted at all. Was Romania, Colombia, Mexico. I would have thought that would have been a bigger one. Russia, Trinidad, Saudi Arabia, Albania, and the Czech Republic. That's those are the places that have found this podcast exactly one time. So I thought that was kind of weird. There's also one that's listed as Anonymous Proxy. So, Brewski, we know you listened. We know you heard one of our episodes. Okay, let's talk Dynasty Draft, because we've done a weird little foray here into where are you from, and it's kind of fun for us, probably more than for those of you listening. Adrian, you guys have completed one round of a first-year free agent draft in your Dynasty League, and it's pretty interesting, because as someone myself that doesn't do much in the way of Dynasty Leagues, to see where some guys got knocked way down and where guys got bumped way up was enlightening for me. Like, a few of them, the top few made a lot of sense. I'll just list them right now. Anthony Davis went 1, Giannis went 2, and Karl Anthony Towns went 3. Nikola Jokic went 4. I feel like the explanation for those 4 is fairly straightforward, but I'm going to ask you, because here's what I think I'm reading in that, is that these guys are superstars and they're young, which is sort of, that's the golden egg, right? You're looking for someone who's already a first-round value and could stay there for 8 or 9 years.
Yes, absolutely. Basically the top tier elite guys that come off the board first are the guys who are elite now, who are in their early prime, early 20s. Anthony Davis, I believe, 24. Giannis also right there. Karl Anthony Towns in his early 20s. Shortly after that, Donovan Mitchell, a guy who has first round potential, 21 years old. Joel Embiid, 24. I mean, these are guys right now that are on the verge of first round value, who are just entering their prime, who may be a first round player for the next 10 years, Dan. So these are the guys that go off the board first. This is why you want the top pick in a dynasty draft for guys like this.
Yeah, that seems huge. Getting the first, second, third pick. I mean, to get a guy like Giannis in a dynasty league seems like, it seems like it could set your team up for years. It almost, I hate to phrase it like this, but it almost seems a little bit unfair.
Yeah, and you know what we do to kind of equal out that is, in the third round, we copy the secthe round. So
it's a third round reversal.
Exactly. So as you know, we're doing a snake. So if you have the last pick, of course you get to pick again. And then what we're doing is, once we go through that snake in the second round, we basically mirror the second round, copy the exact same thing, because it gives those guys picking late another shot at an early pick. And then after that third round, we just continue the snake for the rest of the draft. So we feel like it kind of equals out. But let's be honest here. You really do have a great advantage if you got a shot at one of these elite young guys.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, you look at a guy like, well, let's compare. All right, let's go through the first round, and then we'll loop back to this discussion, because I think I want to continue it, but those people listening don't know the next few names on the list. James Harden went 5, which seems early for a guy who's been a superstar for a few years already. Can you explain that one to me?
Yeah, James Harden's still elite. I mean, we wouldn't be surprised, right, if this guy finishes as the number one option in fantasy. Now, the reason why he's not going in the top 4, he's 28 years old. You get a guy who's just slightly lower than him, who's in their early 20s, that overtakes his value, his current value. The most interesting thing about Dynasty is you're throwing in all of these players' long-term value. And it just really, it's very intriguing how it just completely changes the landscape. And we saw it right here. If this was a redraft league, James Harden would have went number 2, number 3 probably at the latest. But because he's 28 years old, he slipped a couple spots.
Okay, that makes sense. So what I'm gathering from you is there are sort of two very distinct and almost equally important nuggets that go into the early first round part of the draft. One of them is age and the other is ability. And if you can get both, well, then you've got one of those like four guys that's clearly just head and shoulders above everybody else. And then beyond that, you kind of have to pick which direction you want to go. So number 5 was James Harden, and then it kind of swings back the other way. Donovan Mitchell, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons went 6, 7, and 8. None of these guys has been a first-round value yet, but they're all potential budding superstars where someone's like, look, I'm going to get myself a 21-year-old, and I'm going to get myself a guy that could be a first-round pick for the next 12 years. And maybe, and here's I guess the other side of it is if those guys don't turn into first-round values this year, that is going to make this season tough for those dynasty teams, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. The reason why these guys went off the board, all very young guys who, their upside is first-round value. I mean, Donovan Mitchell finished with second-round value already in just his rookie year. Joel Embiid's already knocking on the door. So, you can't really fault any of these picks. Now, Dan, I gotta ask you a question. Do you believe that Ben Simmons has first round upside? Because I think for him to get there, his shooting really needs to come around, or he needs to add something else to his game, like a 3-point shot. And that might be a lot to ask for a guy like Ben Simmons. Do you feel like he's got first round upside going forward in his career?
Did you guys go 8 or 9 cat for this dynasty league?
I believe we are playing 9 category.
Oh, well, then the answer is no. In a 9 cat, and it sort of comes back almost to my age-old Dan hates Giannis Antetokounmpo discussion, which is, look, Ben Simmons, his free throw percentage was atrocious. His turnovers were way too high. If you wipe out turnovers, then he had a stellar season last year, and he really hurt you in one statistical category out of those 8. If you leave turnovers in a 9 cat to be as good as he was in, I think I'd argue 4 of the 9 categories, he was borderline elite or better in 4 out of 9 categories, and you could give him a pretty good pat on the back for blocks also, because he averaged about a block a game from, you could deploy him at a point guard spot if you want. So that's a pretty good bonus as well. But no 3-pointers, not one, and he doesn't look like he's close to adding that part to his game yet. A 56% foul shooter on pretty high volume that could go up as he continues to get more aggressive throughout his career. And 3.5 turnovers a game. This guy was number 51 on a per-game basis in 9 cat. Yes, the 81 games played were nice. That's not something you can count on a guy doing every year for a decade, which is, if that's the way you're valuing him in a dynasty league, you have to assume somewhere along the line a guy's going to miss time. It just happens that way. Of the 3 names we just brought up, the young guys in a 9-category format, he is, unfortunately, the farthest from hitting that first-round mark, simply because he has a gaping hole in his game. And you could even argue 2 or 3 medium-sized holes if you rolled all together. You just can't get to that plateau when you have those openings in your fantasy game. But, hopefully he can fix them. Maybe turnovers come down. Maybe his free throw percentage gets better. I don't know that I expect the 3-pointers to come along anytime soon, but much like with Giannis, someone's got to show me that this big change is happening before I believe that they can make that next leap. So, yeah, I think I might have waited a little bit longer on Ben Simmons. But you know what? He's a guy that's going to be a very good basketball player for a very long time. Problem is, to take him that early, you miss out on an opportunity to take, one of the guys we're about to talk about later. How did you feel about those 3 guys?
So, I agree with you. I agree exactly with you. I was really shocked on the Ben Simmons pick at 8, only because, just as you said, I just don't really see him hitting that first round value. I agree that he needs to add that 3-point shot to his game. Now, one of the great things about Ben Simmons is he seems to understand that he's not a great outside shooter, so he doesn't take a lot of outside shots. He went primarily inside all year long. So, it doesn't sound like he's working really hard to add that 3-point shot to his game. So I thought that was somewhat of a reach to pick him at 8, especially with the guys we're going to talk next. Kevin Durant went at 9. A guy, again, in his late 20s, but still in his prime, still has a lot of years left. And a guy who we know is going to finish as a top 5 player in fantasy. So you could have, okay, so we're just talking about how Ben Simmons is a reach to finish in the first round. Kevin Durant is automatic to finish in the first round. Question is he going to be the number 1 player or is he going to be the number 5 player? That's the question. So, you had a chance to get a guy like that who, he's not 33 like LeBron James. He's in his late 20s. He's still got a lot left in the tank. So, I thought that was, out of all the picks, I thought that was the biggest reach. But also, as you said, Ben Simmons, very young, going to be a great player for years to come, just getting started. So, it's one of the things about Dynasty 2, Dan, is it's so subjective because you're really taking into account the long play here, right? It's just you can't really fault anyone for where they're picking guys.
No, you can't. You can't. And you can't really know until the year 2028 when we look back on this draft and we can say, oh, you know what, Ben Simmons, he turned out to be a first-round guy for the last 6 years. You just very rarely see a 56% foul shooter magically become an 82% free throw shooter. And in a 9-cat format, he's either going to need to add 2 3-pointers per game and keep his field goal percent really high to get to that next level, or turn himself into an 80% foul shooter. And I don't know that either one of those things is around the corner, which means he's sort of capped out at probably, again, in 9-cat, he's capped out probably around top 20 or so, like an Andre Drummond type territory. Interestingly, by the way, Adrian, before we move to that next chunk that you mentioned includes Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell finished last year behind Ben Simmons in 9 category format. And the reason I think folks are a little bit more optimistic about Donovan Mitchell getting to that next threshold is that the warts on his game are easier to address. He can assist more. He can decrease the number of turnovers if he's on a team with a point guard like a Ricky Rubio, or, those types of things they're inversely proportional. Where this last year, he had an assist-to-turnover ratio of less than 1.5 to 1, which wasn't particularly good. He can potentially get better from the field than 43.5%. This is a rookie year. Guys usually do get better in that category. So to me, it felt like Donovan Mitchell has, I don't want to say a clearer path to first-round value, because he still strikes me as more of a second-round kind of guy, just based on his makeup, based on where some of the holes are in his game. Of those 3 guys that got picked there, my favorite far and away is Joel Embiid, because he has a clear path to first-round value. He has such a unique fantasy stat set. He's good from the field. He's decent from the free throw line. Frankly, all he would really need to do is knock the turnovers down from 4 to 2.5, and he'd be a second-round value already. So that's one. The only worry there, obviously, is the health side of things. So next chunk here. I want to keep picking your brain, and I don't want to spend too much time on any one pick. You mentioned Kevin Durant. He's part of. It's interesting, by the way, in looking how these picks went. He's part of kind of a run of slightly older guys with Victor Oladipo sprinkled in there. This is like when a company fires all their old guys and they have to fire one young guy also, so they don't get sued for age discrimination. Kevin Durant, Victor Oladipo, Steph Curry, and Kawhi Leonard was the next grouping of 4, where it's 3 guys that are older, that are proven first-rounders, one of whom with a massive injury bugaboo on his name in Kawhi, and then Oladipo, who I have to say, Adrian, I was floored that he fell to 10 in your Dynasty draft. He seems like one of those guys that's got late first round value for the next 7 or 8 years written all over him.
Yeah, I agree with you. Victor Oladipo's already right there. He finished at the end of the first round right now. In his, I believe he's 24 years old. As you said, for years to come, he's going to be right there. So really interesting to see him fall at 10. But yeah, I was really surprised. I thought that Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, I thought these guys would go more in the middle part of this draft, like in that 5, 6, 7, 8 range. So it was very surprising to see guys like Victor Oladipo, Donovan Mitchell, Ben Simmons go in front of these guys. So it's just, when you're taking into account, you're going to have these guys for the rest of their career. You're going to own these guys for the life of the Dynasty League. It's just guys want to get that young guy, that young, exciting guy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Get there.
That really, I'm sorry to jump in here, but that's the thing that's really kind of poking at me a little bit, is it feels like people are really playing towards the future in looking at the way, and obviously the first 3 or 4 guys are young and they're also crazy mega studs already. But it does seem like there's this gravitation to the young, shiny thing as opposed to the old, less shiny, but always there. Like, there's really no telling. What if fantasy sports just doesn't exist in 5 years? And that's not going to happen. But, like, there is a universe where suddenly something crazy happens and, like, 8 teams. What if 8 people in this league move to a country where they can't participate in fan tracks? Like, there's so much playing towards the future. The cash is there if you're willing to make a run at it early, especially if you have a pick in the first half of this first round. Like, the guys that got, to me, like Victor Oladipo, who went 10th in this thing, that's where he would go in a redraft league. I mean, that's where he is on a year-to-year. And with his age, I would have thought he would have gotten a bump. Like, that's a fantastic pick for Dynasty or for reality. If you're going for a win right now, Steph Curry going at 11, I mean, this is a guy that's generally the number 1 or number 2 by average dude in fantasy to have the 11th pick and to have a shot at a guy that can lift you the way that a Steph Curry can, that's colossal to be able to get that kind of value. And I know that, maybe he's only going to be awesome for another 4 or 5 years, but that sure gives you a window if you wanted to move him or if you wanted to change the way your team was constructed. Like, I feel like a lot of the drafting here is people assuming they can't make moves, and there are going to be a boatload of moves. I get emails every time the Hoopball Dynasty 1 league has a trade go down. There's like 30 a month. It's out of control. Please, people, stop for a second. So things are going to change. I think there's a little bit too much of the shiny stuff going on here. Okay, next chunk here. That was me getting on my soapbox for a minute, even though I'm not a big Dynasty guy. I just, like, you could win this thing 2 or 3 years in a row at the beginning with the way people are trying to gun down the line here. At 13 was Devin Booker. That's an interesting one. What do you think about that one? Because I don't really know what to make of. Again, this I think is where my Dynasty knowledge brings us up a little bit short, but I mean, this was a guy in 9-cat who didn't even crack the top 45 last year.
No, I really like this pick. Again, what this guy's trying to do, he's trying to get ahead of the curve here. Devin Booker, already an elite scorer, already a top 10 scorer in the NBA at age 21. I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet. So I really like this pick because, he's not really close to that first round yet. Is he going to get there? I don't know. That's a big question mark, but I do really like this pick. I think he still has a lot of improvement to make, still very young at 21. So I don't see anything wrong with this pick here.
Fair enough. I mean, again, this is where I think my knowledge holds me back a little bit. What about Damian Lillard at 14? He feels like a pretty proven asset. I feel like I've lost track of how old Damian Lillard is. He's been in the NBA for a little bit now, but he's not that old, right?
Are you looking? Don't look.
Don't look?
Don't look. How old do you think Damian Lillard is? Because I got to tell you, Dan, I looked this up and it shocked me. So I want you to throw a guess out right here.
My guess was going to be like around 30.
Okay, because I thought he was 24. He's 28 years old, Dan.
Yeah, because he was a 3 or 4 year college guy, I think, right?
And that's what I didn't realize. I thought he was coming into the NBA as like a one and done guy, and he hasn't been in the NBA that long. So when I looked him up, as I was doing my Dynasty rankings, and I looked him up, 28 years old already.
I can't remember where he went. So it was a small school.
Yeah. Oh man.
This one I'll look up because I think we'll get roasted if we don't come up with it. There's probably going to be a grad. Oh, Weber State. He's a Weber State guy.
State.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a 4-year guy because nobody paid attention to him because he was like, he's listed at 6'3", 195, but that's what they call a roster, 6'3", 195. In reality, he's like 6 feet, 175 for sure. I've seen this for years on baseball rosters where there are guys that are like shorter than me and weigh 75 pounds or like weigh the exact same amount. Me, if you put me on a baseball roster, I would be like 5'11", 195 pounds. And by the way, guys, I'm 5'8", 140. So that's let's remember what we're looking at here. So what do you think about that one? Because he's not like old. One would think he still has 4 or 5 like really strong seasons left in him. But there may be a decline. He played a lot of games for most of his career. He's been pretty durable. What does this pick mean to you? I really don't know.
I think this is a great value pick at 14. Damian Lillard's a top 10 guy, and 28 years old. That's not that old. As you said, very durable. Hasn't had any major injuries. Does not miss a lot of games. So this is a great pick. And by the way, this is picked by Hoopball's own Hank Aaron made this pick.
Hammer and Hank.
Yes, and great value here at 14. I mean, Damian Lillard could finish as the number 6 overall player. Damian Lillard can be an elite guy till he's 34 years old. I mean, look, Chris Paul is 33, and Chris Paul's still doing it on an elite level. So Damian Lillard, not an old guy. Yes, he's not at the very beginning of he's not an early 20s guy, but he's still got a lot of years to go here. So great pick by Hank Aaron here.
Drummond
Good
at 15.
14.
Drummond at 15. This one surprised me a little bit because I feel like he's kind of maxed out, right?
Well, so, there's
Maybe
been
not.
a lot of buzz on Andre Drummond this offseason. He's taking 200 corner threes a day, doesn't leave the gym until he shoots 200 corner threes, adding an outside shot to his game. Andre Drummond's still pretty young, and you can dominate the boards, should score well. The field goal percentage is good. So if he really does add shooting to his game, like let's say he does add an outside shot, does knock down a 3 here and there, if his free throw shooting improves, he could see a significant bump in value. So it's an interesting pick here. But if you buy into the narrative that he's still improving and we haven't seen his best yet, I can't fault the pick here, Dan.
All right, fair enough. Paul George is the next one off the board. He was at 16. This feels pretty reasonable. Guy that's like a nice, safe, early second round kind of value. And what's he? He's in his late 20s, right? So there's a few years left on that thing. It's not, this isn't like the hoping and praying kind of pick. Like there's some guys that come off the board a little bit later here that are a little bit more risque. This feels like a very safe play. Somebody wants to build a nice kind of foundational team.
Yeah, Paul George really improved his value from last season. A lot of question marks going into last season. Him coming off that major injury. Could he play next to Russell Westbrook? How would he fit in that Oklahoma City offense? Answered all those questions. Stayed healthy all year. Very productive. A do-it-all type of guy. 28 years old. So still, just as we were talking about with Damian Lillard, still has a lot of years ahead of him. And I think this is a great pick. Another good value at 16. Paul George wouldn't surprise me if he finishes in that right around that 10, 11, 12 range. I can see him finishing the season right there. So this is a great value here.
Things get
great pick again.
Things get pretty weird after this point. From where I'm sitting, the next 8 names here, and we'll go through them one by one. Kristaps Porzingis, Russell Westbrook, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, John Wall, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Clint Capella. I mean, that is a guy from every corner of the fantasy spectrum. That's wild. Kristaps Porzingis at 17. Young, crazy ceiling, massive injury risk. I mean, this is like, people are starting to roll the dice a little bit here. I like it. It's crazy. I don't think I would do it. What do you think about that one?
So, Kristaps Porzingis, only 21 years old. Now, coming off of a major injury for this upcoming year in redraft leagues, not very high on Porzingis' outlook. We may not even see him at the beginning of the season, may not really get going till maybe 2-3 months into the season. So really curious to see what Team Bigfoot does in the next round, because he may kind of be punting this season for, the next season or the season after. But I don't have a problem with this. We know Porzingis is special because of the blocks and the threes. That's why we call him the unicorn. So still young at 21 years old. You like to think he's going to bounce back from that injury. All signs, everything I'm hearing is that he's healing well, and his rehab is going really great. So don't have a problem with this pick. The sky's the limit for Porzingis, still so young, Dan. And, we know he's got the template to be a complete player, though. Just those blocks and the threes and good shooter, a big that doesn't hurt you at the line. Those guys are so valuable, Dan. So I'm okay with this pick here.
What about Westbrook at 18? That's a really interesting one. I mean, does he come back to where he used to be this coming season?
No, I don't think we're ever going to see that Westbrook that we saw when he won that MVP. That was a really special year for Westbrook because he was playing without that second superstar. So he was literally everything for that team, which is why those huge triple doubles. So I think we're going to see, the Thunder, they added Dennis Schroeder to their team as well. So we may see Westbrook kind of be limited some nights. They might kind of rest him for the postseason. So I think Westbrook is still going to be an elite option. I think he'll still finish around that 10 range, kind of similar to where he finished last year. Him slipping to 18 here is kind of a signal of his age, in his later 20s. So you kind of take that into account. Of course, too, this is 9-cat, so the turnovers hurt him as well. The field goal percentage, a real bog there as well. So that kind of maybe why he fell here. Dan, really interesting. We were at pick 17 in this draft, and Westbrook and LeBron James were still on the board. And it occurred to me, like, how far are these guys going to slip? Like, if you're picking on the turn here, could you land Westbrook and LeBron James? I mean, could you imagine in a deep 2014 like this, having two guys like Westbrook and LeBron James? Yes, their long-term outlook isn't great, but man, I mean, you're going to be, you're setting yourself up to win for the next 3 to 4 years easily.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. That'd be a pretty good spot to build on without getting a pick inside the top 10. Jason Tatum at 19 and Luka Doncic at 20, which I think you said was you, right? So Dan, tell me about the young guys.
So Dan, I got a great story about these next two picks. So when I knew I had pick 20, I knew that these main guys were going to be off the board. All the guys we talked about, of course, Anthony Davis, Giannis, Cat. So what you want to do at pick 20, you want to grab a young guy who you see in 2 or 3 years being up at the top of this board. You want to grab a guy who isn't that top 10 guy yet, but you feel in 2 or 3 years will be a top 10 guy. And I thought Jason Tatum was that guy. Now, he's not in a great situation with the Boston Celtics, because the Celtics are so overloaded with talent. So he does have that working against him. But Dan, I got a funny story. So Eric Ong was on the clock, who was picking at 18. He's in the Philippines, and Ronald, who had pick 19, who chose Jason Tatum, was also in the Philippines. So all of us in the league, we've been waiting all day for Eric Ong and Ronald to make their picks. We literally have been looking at the board since 8 a.m. this morning, knowing that it's evening time in the Philippines, right? So we know, hey, Eric and Ronald, they're not even going to get up till about 5 p.m. our time. So, Dan, I have Jason Tatum in my queue, the only guy I've thought about since I knew I was going to have 20 pick. I mean, Dan, I've been so focused on this guy. I'm like, who's a good complement to Jason Tatum for me to build my team? So Eric makes his pick. Russell Westbrook, great pick. Ronald right after him snipes me, grabs Jason Tatum.
Crushing. Crushing.
Dan, I was on tilt. I never even in my mind had a backup pick. I thought for sure Jason Tatum wouldn't be on anyone's radar right there. Yeah,
that's crazy. Got all the way to you. 19. I mean, there are like 250 guys out there that could have gone in that spot.
And Dan, I literally waited 7 hours to make my Jason Tatum pick. Having my finger on the trigger to make this pick, and then for him to be gone one pick ahead of me, it was heartbreaking.
Oh, you poor sap. You poor sap. So you went Luka.
So I was a little bit on tilt here when I chose Luka. I was a little out of my mind, a little steaming, but you know what? I really like Luka Doncic, Dan. I think he really reminds me, his game really reminds me a lot of James Harden, a do-it-all type of guy. Went to the right team. The Dallas Mavericks is going to start right away. Should get a lot of playing time. He can play at the 2 spot or the 3 spot next to Dennis Smith Jr. He's going to get good minutes right away. I think this is a franchise type player. I think, this season, I don't think he's going to finish anywhere near the first round. I think he'll probably finish as a 3rd, 4th round value at best. So, Dan, I'm kind of forced now to kind of take the long play.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question. I want to quickly hit 21 through 24, and then I want to come back to your pick of Luka, because it does lead us down another pathway here. John Wall, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Clint Capella. Now, outside of Capella, who's still very young, you've got 3 established guys. LeBron, obviously the senior citizen of them. This just seems like people that were like, look, either I can take a massive flyer here, or I can take a proven asset at the end of a 24-team first round, and I can still compete this season. And it makes a lot of sense for them to go that direction, to say, you know what, I don't want to write myself off immediately. Adrian, you've taken more of a long view. Those picks, again, exception maybe Capella, are much more of a, hey, let's see what we can make happen here. I don't know how the rest of this draft is going to go. Maybe those teams can build a formidable ball club that can compete with someone who, I don't know, maybe someone between 5 and 15 in those picks ends up drafting a bunch of young guys as well. So there are opportunities to kind of sneak through. You never know how a head-to-head league is going to shake up towards the end of the year. Am I basically covering that accurately? Because if so, I'd like to talk more about your team.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right on with that assessment. And, John Wall, Kyrie Irving, Clint Capella, these are guys win now guys, but guys, you still have a lot of flexibility here to go young or to also stay in that win now mode and go stay on that timetable. Now, what's really interesting here, and I hope I'm not getting too ahead of us here, but LeBron James, 33 years old. Now, a guy, though, Dan, this guy has never had a major injury ever. I mean, have we ever seen an athlete in any sport who takes care of himself the way that LeBron does? We've heard the rumors and the buzz about how he spends $1.5 million every year on his body, the cryo chambers and the diet and all that stuff. I mean, Dan, this is a guy who could maybe do this for another 3 or 4 years. So
I have an important question for you, Adrian, because I know the answer for me is how much money would you have to spend on your own body to look or feel that good? Because the answer for me is way more than $1.5 million. There is almost no amount of money that could make me look even remotely close to that good. So,
Dan, I think LeBron James is the perfect mixture of amazing genetics, great work ethic, mixed with it's just like the perfect storm.
Yeah.
And I think the reason, Dan, if you take a look at all the other guys that were drafted in his year, Chris Bosh out of the league, Dwayne Wade about to be out of the league, Carmelo Anthony, a shell of his former self. He's the only guy left standing from his draft class that is like, Dan, last year, LeBron had maybe the best year of his career.
It's crazy.
So,
he's an android.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to see him fall at 22 because of his age. People look at his age 33, and that's why he fell this low. But a great pick by this team. And now what's really interesting, Dan, in the second round, this team went DeAndre Ayton, who's rookie center from Arizona picked. So really interesting that he's got maybe like the oldest elite guy, and now he went super duper young.
Okay, so this
upcoming guy.
Does that mean, do you think, and I don't know if this is something that can be executed with any kind of ease or if it takes some real needle threading to get it done, if you go young from that point on, you have maybe the most coveted trade chip on the market. Like, what if he moved LeBron James at the deadline this year to a team in first, second, third, maybe fourth or fifth place, a team that wants to try to surge up and over the top, that doesn't have an Anthony Davis, so maybe they don't have 6-7 years of first-round got. Like, they could potentially, I would assume, trade LeBron James and get a whopper of a return on it.
Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what you want to do. So depending on what this team does for the rest of the draft, depending on what kind of season they have during the year, they will have flexibility here. LeBron definitely for the next few years will be very movable. So, that's definitely an option for this team here, Dan.
Okay, now I want to talk quickly about your team again before we wrap this thing up. You said you've just, by going Luka Doncic there in the first round, you've put yourself in a spot where you almost can't win this year, right? I don't know that there's a situation. Maybe you stumble upon that one like mid-30s dude like Oladipo this year who turns into a first-round pick, but that doesn't happen every year. And if you don't get that guy, you're cooked. So now, do you just go all young, or do you grab some older guys in there and try to move them for picks down the line? How do you proceed without giving away your entire strategy? Because obviously, there's still a number of rounds of this draft left ready to happen. But what would you recommend to somebody else who may be taking that long view?
So, Dan, when I knew I had picked 20, my plan was to go the long view, to go the young route. My plan was not to win this year. So I knew when I landed in that 20 spot. But, what was really interesting, I was telling you before that at pick 17, when Westbrook and LeBron were still on the board, I was pondering, hey, I still kind of have this option to win now if I can land Westbrook and if LeBron keeps falling here. So there was a glimmer of that option of, can I win now? But it was always, for me, my target was Jason Tatum. Even if I would have drafted Jason Tatum, my plan was still to take that long route, go young. So my plan is to target a lot of young guys and to hope that these guys, I can get 5-6 guys that end up being 3 or 4 years from now, being top 20, top 30 guys 3 to 4 years from now or 5 years from now. So I really am taking the long play here. But you're absolutely right, Dan. Later on in this draft, maybe I can land guys, guys like Tobias Harris. There's guys out there that are still, in their mid-20s that can help you win now. And they still have a lot of value in the future. Really, guys that are very easy to move in deals. So I don't just have to go young. I will definitely target guys that are still, kind of in the middle of their prime later in this draft.
Well, that makes sense. It seems like for the most part, you're going with the namesake here and trying to build a dynasty. So well done. That's our show. Maybe we do another round next time around. This was kind of fun, and I'm actually learning quite a bit on the fly here. You want to do round 2 next Tuesday?
Yeah, let's do round 2. And real quick, special shout out to Scott Douglas, who helped me set this league up. He's the real Dynasty guru. Scott Douglas helped me set up the league, has been helping me with like the rules and the policy, and just, I'm still kind of fairly new as like being a commissioner of a league like this, really helping me out with the settings and everything. Thank you very much, Scott.
Scott deserves about 8 shout-outs from Hoopball because he also designed the graphics for our Friday shows when they became much prettier. He's walked me through how to do the video encoding part of that, and he's also teaching me how to light my bedroom so it doesn't look like I'm podcasting out of a dungeon. So Scott Douglas, he is the man of the hour. He is the man of the year, more than the hour. Adrian Benjamins, Dynasty superhero. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot, Dan. It was a lot of fun.
It was. We'll be breaking down more Dynasty stuff as this offseason rolls along. We got good things to talk about here on the pod. Tomorrow, you guys are stuck with me, which means it's more betting. I'll be with Neil Rochlani on Thursday, and then you and Neil, Adrian, you're wrapping up that's the last conference, right? The 6th and final one?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, man. We must not be that far away from the season. All right, it's still like 2 months away. At Adrian Benjamins on Twitter, at Dan Besbris if you want to follow either of us. Feel free to ask Adrian about Dynasty things. I know that's what a lot of people are focused on in August, and you got yourself a great resource right here on Fantasy NBA Today. Have a lovely Tuesday, everyone. I'll talk at you again tomorrow. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.